Over the years, there's definitely been a few things that Royal Caribbean has put out there that I have absolutely loved, and then I felt like I was the kiss of death for it. I mean, there are things that come out, and I think this is the future. This is what I'm going to do forever, enjoy all the time. And then for whatever reason, it just doesn't pan out. And I wanted to share some of them today because I was actually reading some of the emails that some of our readers have sent in, and they asked me about Sabor, which is a Mexican restaurant that's left on I think one or two ships left now. And I used to love this restaurant, but I realized that I was basically the kiss of death for it, and there's been a number of others that have been there. We'll start with Sabor because Sabor is a Mexican restaurant. It's available on Liberty and Harmony of the Seas now. It used to be on Allure as well, but its refurbishment meant it was gone. They took it away. And of course, both Harmony and Liberty are getting refurbishments next year. So basically, this is the end for Sabor. When it first came out, I really loved it because it was higher quality Mexican food. Up until that point, Royal Caribbean really didn't have much good Mexican. There was a concept called Rita's Cantina that was available on a few ships. Allure actually had one, if I'm not mistaken, as did the Radiance class ships. And Rita's Cantina was, on the Radiance class ships, it was an outdoor space by the Windjammer. So basically, if you walk through the Windjammer on the right, or actually the left side of the ship, the port side, there was a bar area and seating. And in the case of both of those, that place rather, this is where you go to this restaurant, and it was essentially a la carte dining. So you go there, you pay for, a chips and salsa, right? And that's all you pay for. It would be a cover charge restaurant. The problem is, I don't know how, but Royal Caribbean managed to truly make a terrible Mexican restaurant. I mean, it was just really poor food. I remember ordering the guacamole and thinking, this is some of the worst guacamole I've ever had. So that was the bar that was set. Beyond that, of course, you have the Mexican food that's occasionally in the Windjammer or a dish in the main dining room. Certainly a Loco Fresh came about later on and was pretty good. Actually, it is one of my favorite casual restaurants on Royal Caribbean. But again, at that point, that Loco Fresh didn't exist. So Sabor was really different. It offered tableside guacamole, which was fantastic. It offered tableside margaritas. Some of them, at least, were made tableside, which was, once again, fantastic. You also had some traditional Mexican food and some not untraditional Mexican food, like more modern food. I love that. And I thought it was a good mix of flavor. It was a cover charge restaurant. I thought overall it was a really good concept, especially the margaritas and the appetizers were wonderful. And I would go there. I would go out of my way to dine there. It was so darn good. But at some point, Royal Caribbean kind of gave up on the idea. Kind of many concepts, I think many of these we're going to talk about, are things that were developed. They came up with it, and then they essentially just languished. They spoiled on the vine, so to speak. Some concepts get created by Royal Caribbean, and they're curated, and there's money pumped into them, and they become like bigger and better things. Others just kind of get put out there, and just nothing really happens. And that's kind of what happened here with Sabor. It kind of became stale, and they didn't add it to any more ships. Number one sign a restaurant is not doing well is if it doesn't get added to any more ships. Number two is right around, this is, I think, before COVID. At some point in its short lifespan, the beginning of it, they got rid of the tableside guacamole. They made the guacamole in the back. And no matter what they claimed, it was never the same. Quality-wise, freshness-wise, a couple times, I guarantee it was mass-produced because it was cold. It just wasn't it certainly wasn't the same thing. And then Royal Caribbean tweaked the menu. They, I think, realized it wasn't that popular. And so they changed the menu a little bit. Once again, it got watered down and it just lost its luster. As newer concepts came out, as other restaurants kind of rose in prominence, Sabor became kind of a forgotten thing. It was like, oh, you're on a ship with Sabor. Okay. And to this day, when I've gone on ships that have had Sabor still, I think most recently that was on Liberty of the Seas or Allure of the Seas, it's okay. It brings back some fond memories, but it ain't what it used to be. And if you listen to old podcast episodes and even YouTube videos I talk about it a lot in anything that was pre, 2021, 2020, something like that, but it just ain't what it used to be. Number 2 on my list was actually dynamic dining, at least at the end of its lifetime. So Royal Caribbean made a really big deal back in 2014 They were going to redo the main dining room experience, something called dynamic dining. Without going into an entire episode about dynamic dining, essentially what it was okay, with the quantum class arriving, they were going to have this concept, and they were going to expand this by the way to the Oasis class and other ships as well. But the idea was you have the main dining room, which up until that point was one spot, same menu, well, not same menu, but like same area overnight. But the idea was with dynamic dining was you were going to have 4 restaurants in the main dining room space, 4 smaller restaurants. And one was always formal night. One was Asian. One was American, which was basically like, I think, not formal night main dining room food. And the last one was, I believe, was it French? Now I'm trying to remember what the heck it was. It doesn't matter. But there's a 4th concept I'm totally blanking on right now. And the idea was that you would rotate between the restaurants. You could go to one of the restaurants. You could pick one. You could have formal night every night of the restaurant of the cruise if you'd like to. You could eat in the Asian restaurant only, or mix it up, whatever. And of course, the menus were different in each one. The concept, like, just fell over like a ton of bricks. I mean, people hated it from the get-go for a variety of reasons. I think it wasn't well thought out in terms of how to adapt a cruise culture that was used to one thing and was now suddenly thrown into another thing. There were lots of issues with the speed of service, quality of service. It just didn't quite work out the way that they thought about it. Now, to their credit, they tried to hold on to it and work on it. And right at the end, right before they canceled it, they came up with what I thought was the winning combination. They were going to do this idea, like, basically, if you have traditional dining, not my time, but traditional dining, you would you'd have a rotating restaurant selection, rather. So you'd start off, night one, in the French, in the formal night one, the Grand, and then to Chic, and then to Silk. And with each one, you'd have the same table mates, same dining staff, which, by the way, is an idea that basically Disney Cruise Line does. And I thought actually is an idea that Disney Cruise Line has always done really well, where you rotate restaurants. So it doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing all the time necessarily. And this was their approach to fixing it. But at this point, and I threw my weight behind it, I thought this was actually finally going to work, and this would be a really good idea. And I love the idea that you had different menus and ways to change things up. But it just didn't work out. People just didn't like it. And the problem was from the get-go was how it was presented. It's things that Royal Caribbean later got right, I think, with its main dining room update that happened in 2023, quality of service, speed of service, things of that nature. But man, I didn't love dynamic dining from the get-go, but at the end of it, I thought they finally got it right. But, the writing was on the wall at that point. I think ultimately the concept the name alone kind of killed it. You know what I mean? And so from that standpoint, it was over. Number 3 on my list, something that's not dead yet, but it certainly hasn't been innovated all that much, was WoW bands. I love this idea when Royal Caribbean came up with WoW bands as a way to truly change things. Once again, this is another idea that came out a number of years ago, and it was what at the time, I believe it came out actually with Quantum of the Seas as well, this dynamic dining WoW bands, things that seemed so good at the time. But I love this idea because I thought it was the wave of the future. Like, SeaPass cards had worked great, but being able to tap to pay and scan. I remember going on Quantum of the Seas when it first came out, and WoW bands were hot and heavy, and they were being used correctly, and servers would have these mobile readers and they would scan it. Everything was great. The problem with WoW bands is essentially the way it was implemented in 2014 is the way it still is today. While WoW bands did get added to a number of new ships, and actually to its credit, it still gets added to new ships, it's just remained in this like 2014 version for, well, over 10 years. Like, I mean, there are some new designs on Star of the Seas and Icon, but like, and they have the Wayfinder for the kids finder thing, which is cool, but nothing has changed. Like, fundamentally, I do believe Princess's medallion technology has gotten better. So for what it's worth, Royal just hasn't invested in it. Worse yet is mobile readers essentially disappeared. Although, as I'm recording this, when I was on Star of the Seas for Thanksgiving, all of a sudden there were mobile readers again. Whether I went to a bar or a restaurant, the crew members had a mobile reader they could use, so you didn't have to take your WoW bands off of your wrist, which was one of the biggest problems I had with WoW bands for a long time, which is that if you have to take them off your wrist to use them, they're useless, or it diminishes the value of them. But I was really hoping Royal would have invested more into this to make it truly go beyond simply, a tap to touch. I mean, I think for a lot of us, we all assume that integration into like tap to pay with your phone or an Apple Watch would be certainly the wave of the future. It's just never happened. And so WoW bands aren't dead, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of life left in them. I'm hopeful they'll innovate them, but man, I was really big on WoW bands as well. And these days, I gotta be honest with all of you, I don't think I have plenty of them because I paid for them, years ago. So I could easily bring them on board the ship and exchange them for new ones at no cost. But I just can't be bothered because it just doesn't seem like it's worth it. And then lastly, we have Zone Zero. My goodness. If there's something I wanted to succeed more than anything with Zone Zero, it came on Odyssey of the Seas. This was a virtual reality experience. And if you sailed on Odyssey for the first, 2 or 3 months the ship was out there, you might have had the chance to experience it. This was an activity in which you had to, I believe, pay to do this. But they put you in a full VR suit, not VR goggles, a full suit. You and 3 or 4 other people. And then you would go into this room. So you have a visor on and you have VR sensors all over you. So you can't see anything except for you're being shown in the visor. And you're in this game, and it was a pirate game in which you basically fought off, I think they were like pirate zombie monkeys or something, or zombie pirates. I think that's what it was. And it was so cool. Like you literally, if you walked forward, you would walk forward. It was scary because at some points you'd have to walk over a plank and it looked like you would fall over. It was so much fun. I enjoyed this so much. And if you listen to episodes of the podcast in which or even videos of Odyssey of the Seas that were recorded at the time, I am certain I talked all about it. But within 2 or 3 months, it broke. I mean, guess being guess, wear and tear. Somebody broke it. And from what I'm told, I'm not sure if it's on Royal Caribbean side or the vendor's side, but they didn't want to pay to fix it, basically. They were just like, listen, somebody broke it. We ain't paying for it. Or I don't know what. Whether it's on Royal Caribbean side or the vendor, I don't know. But they never fixed it. And it's been dead ever since. So it lasted 2 or 3 months, but it was the coolest thing ever. I remember bringing my family on Odyssey and I wanted them to experience it, but it was already dead. It was literally lasted maybe 2 or 3 months. But it was probably the coolest VR thing I've ever done. It took a lot of time to get it all set up and going, but it was so darn cool because you literally walked in the real world and that matched the course within the VR world and you were fighting with a fake sword. I thought it was really neat. And unfortunately, I guess I loved it a little too much and that was the end of Zone Zero. So those are some things that clearly, if you all want to blame somebody, you can blame me. I'm the kiss of death for because it just didn't work out. All right, friends, time to answer listener emails. This is part of the episode where I answer emails you sent me. Our first email is from Rich Irwin from Long Island. Hi, Matt, longtime listener, first time emailing. Thank you for everything you do for the cruise community. I apologize this came out more long-winded than I hoped it would. We're a family of 3, my wife and I, and our 16-year-old daughter. They are the coolest wife and daughter ever, so I can't imagine us cruising apart, although I look forward to when she's in college, but she can cruise in the off months. Number 1, I know you have a pair of girls. I always recommend getting 2 separate rooms if possible. But if we do that, we run into the single supplement fee, which is a hard pill to swallow. Can you suggest something I may not be considering? That is a tough pill to swallow because what Rich is talking about here is if you book basically he's got, him and his wife and his daughter. That's 3 people. So he moves his daughter into a separate cabin. His daughter or whomever's in the separate cabin is going to pay double the cruise fare in order. It's basically a fake 4th person. This is the reality of it. I would argue, you just said your daughter and wife are the coolest ever, so maybe you love sharing space with them. I would still argue for the extra bathroom. It's worthwhile. What you really got to do, Rich, is balance. No, some people don't mind sharing rooms with their kids. I do, actually. Having the separate bathroom alone, to me, is worth the cost. Now, you can mitigate that. You could bring your daughter's friend on board. At least you're going to pay for a second person, at least be a real person. You could bring another family member on board, a grandparent, an uncle, a cousin, somebody who could share the room. Once again, either that gets you more value out of instead of paying a single supplement, or that other person pays half the room cost, and then you're good to go there. And of course, weigh that against, how much a suite costs in which you'd have a second bathroom. But having the second bathroom for teenagers, 16-year-old daughter. I don't know your 16-year-old daughter at all, Rich, but if she's anything like mine, my goodness, the amount of time she spends in the bathroom /shower is worth spending a little bit extra money for. My second question is, if I book 2 people in the second room, and let's say at 6 months before the cruise, we don't have a commitment for anybody, I would not be able to change that room to a single person, correct? You could. The problem is it would trigger a reprice. So what you really want to do is book the second room with 2 people, your daughter and a fake, whoever. Put your cousin, your mom, somebody on there. And if you can't find a real second person to go on it, just leave them. They'll no-show there. It doesn't matter. And Rich actually wrote in the email here, I don't cruise just to get points. I'm really just trying to get diamond stats the next few cruises. If they no-show, about half the time it still gets counted as a solo cruise and they get the extra points. Can't promise you that. But I would definitely put on the fake second person, because if you book the second cabin with just your daughter in it, and later on you want to add somebody, that triggers a reprice, especially if you're trying to do it at the last minute, or I say last minute, I mean within like a year. And that could certainly cause a problem, I feel like. So my recommendation is you book the second person, fake second person, and be able to change names later on, as opposed to booking your daughter solo in there. So there you go, Rich. Thanks for the email. Appreciate it. Next email is coming to us from Scott Beering. Hey, Matt, looking for ideas for St. Martin or a post you have for there. I do recall you stating a hotel next to Maho Beach, but as you have stated, Maho is usually packed. You never know what flight times will align. Basically, is this a get off the ship and just stroll around town port, or should we have a plan? Hey, great question. I actually think St. Martin have a plan port. I mean, you could. It's not the worst place to stroll around. But the problem is where the cruise ships dock in St. Martin is sufficiently far away from downtown Phillipsburg. There is a very low-cost water taxi you can take there. Some people do walk. I think those people are crazy because it's 1,000 degrees out. You'll sweat to death in the mile or so walk to downtown, but you could do that. For St. Martin, the recommended hotel you mentioned, that I recommended rather, is the Morgan Resort. It's not through Royal Caribbean. You go to resortpass.com, I believe. And it's right by Maho Beach. They have a wonderful pool, cabanas you can rent. It's a day pass resort. Great. The advantage here compared to just going to Maho Beach is you have facilities, you have shade, you have a pool to go into. I think it's better, quite frankly. So that's why I recommend it. The only problem with it, there's no actual beach access. It's all pool, but it's right by the water. You can see the planes coming in there. I think it's a good value, and I think I would recommend going there if you're going to St. Martin. Otherwise, you're basically picking a beach, I think. There are other things to do in St. Martin. You could go out in the water in a catamaran, but Mullet Bay, Orient Beach, these are all places a lot of people end up at to hang out for the day there, Scott. Our next email is from Richard. Greetings from North Dakota. I noticed the other day when I was looking at booking a cruise through an airline's website, it did not give me the options to prepay gratuities. If I followed through and booked the cruise, could I access my reservation at Royal Caribbean site and prepay them there, or would I be out of luck? Rich, thanks for the email. You would have to contact the travel agent, which is the airline in this case, and they could do that for you. They should be able to do that for you. Even Costco, which is one of the worst companies to book a cruise with because of limitations, like you can't do Royal Up, will allow you to do this. The thing is, basically, their system is sufficiently poor that you can't opt to prepay gratuities right then and there. But you can prepay gratuities at any point between when you book your cruise and the actual, not the sale day, but a couple days before your cruise. And the travel agent is who has to do that. In this case, the airline is the travel agent. So you'd have to contact them. They're whoever, it's like if it was JetBlue, it's JetBlue Vacations or whatever name they have for it. And then they would do that. The cruise plan, you can access the Royal Caribbean site and go to the cruise planner for your cruise and book a drink package and shore excursions, Wi-Fi. You just can't manage your reservation, which includes prepaying gratuities. And our last email today is coming to us from Keith Davis. On your latest podcast, you discussed ways to save on cruise fares. You absolutely hit the nail on the head when you mentioned group rates through a travel agent. We have saved thousands of dollars on cruise fares by doing this. For example, I contacted my MEI agent, Beth, looking for pricing on a 4-night cruise only fare on the Celebrity Summit. She sent me the cruise only rate as well as a group rate for a total of $200 more, which included an upgrade to concierge level, Celebrity's all-included package, which includes the classic drink package and basic Wi-Fi. To top it off, we got a whopping $300 onboard credit. Needless to say, we took the group rate. Just another example of the value of using a travel agent. Keep up the good work. Keith, my friend, first of all, thank you for using our sponsor, MEI Travel. Second of all, I'm so glad to hear that they saved you money. I mean, I've had so many similar experiences where I do what you all do. I go to the Royal Caribbean website, I price out a cruise, I find one that I like. Great, wonderful. text my travel agent, and then she's like, hey, by the way, you got a better rate actually than what you saw. Here's the rate. And I'm like, dang, I was going to book it at the higher price, but this is even better. And just goes to show you the value of a good travel agent. I mean, we were just talking about that airline website and booking through there, and I get it. You're going to get probably extra airline points or whatever. But again, I think sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture, especially some of the perks and amenities and services that you get, or in this case, saving money through the travel agency. So appreciate you the email. Keep thanking everybody for checking out this episode of the Royal Caribbean Blog podcast. If I can answer your questions, send me an email, matt@royalcaribbeanblog.com. Until then, we'll talk again real soon.